Hi, I'm Gary Leslie. Welcome to Highland Park Schools Update, and our guest again is School Superintendent Dr. Scott Taylor. Thank you very much again for doing this.
You're welcome.
So I guess this session we want to talk about the budget process. The budget is, you have to go through this annually. Could you just describe in general, in outline form, the process that you have to go through?
Sure. And I think the public would like to know what they don't see is happening behind the scenes. The whole process begins as early as October when planning for the following school year. And at that time, the building principals will reach out to teachers, support staff, and have them generate what they need on paper so that the principals can put their budget together at the building level. And while they're doing that, the supervisors are considering what kind of curriculum work we need to do the following year. Our special ed director is projecting what costs will be incurred. Me and the business administrator, we're starting to compile all of the paperwork that will follow. And that then takes us into November. Starting in late November, early December, the business administrator and I meet with every single educational leader, supervisor, director of special ed, principal, assistant principal, technology director, facilities director, in small group 1-to-1, 3-to-1 sessions for about an hour, hour and a half to go over line by line every element of the broad district budget. Why? Because we want to be sure there's a rationale for expenditures. There might be times that, as we were having these discussions, we recognize that we underfunded certain areas. So that's a great opportunity in the first level of the whole process for us to vet things before it goes to the next step, which is come January and February to have all of those leaders, the business administrator and I, come back to school at night and meet with the board's finance committee, on which there are 3 members. And we do the same thing all over again. Go over every element of the budget. We do this over the course of 3 nights for about 3 hours. That's an opportunity for the members of the board committee to also present the community's concerns and perspective on needs. So this 2-level vetting process then takes us to March. And this March 18th will be when we present to the Board of Education and the Highland Park community the preliminary budget for the next fiscal year, which will be 2019-2020. It's an opportunity for the public to come out and ask questions. That's just the preliminary budget. We don't present the final budget until May. So it's between the 2 months, March to May, that the board and I have a chance to do some grassroots reach out to the public and talk about the budget, hear concerns as well.
So let me just back up just a little bit just to make sure I understand. So from now, which is February, but you started it in January, to March, you will have met, or you are still meeting with?
No, we will have met with the finance committee and the leadership team. There are other meetings that are occurring to fine-tune the budget, but they don't happen as formally. They're more organic. I might get a call and say, hey, I think we need to budget for this, or we should probably pull this from the budget.
Now the state mandate has a certain structure, a mandated structure for when certain milestones have to occur. Is the March 18th presentation to the public part of that?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Thanks for asking. Yes. So I don't know what the specific date in March is by which we have to have the preliminary budget rolled out. But we, the board and the BA and I know that March 18th is our scheduled meeting list, last opportunity to have that presentation. So, and then in May, I believe it's early May, we're dictated again by the state timeline to present the final budget.
Now, when you say final budget, it's closed at that point.
It's it. It's it.
So from March 18th or whatever it is to May, early May, you have the process of taking comments, taking thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And absorbing them.
And what we've done in the past, and we anticipate doing again this year, is going into the community, local schools, other places of worship, the senior center, to hold forums. We haven't had a lot of crowds at these meetings, I think because there is a renewed trust between the local community and the school board and the administration here. And frankly, once the cap of 2% that we could raise taxes was put in place, there was a layer of protection for the local taxpayer that they didn't have prior.
Now that you mentioned that, let's just talk about that just a bit. So this is relatively new, it's within the last few years that you have this cap. So you have to think about your budget in terms of that constraint. That now, could you just talk a little bit about the reflection of the budget and the taxes that you're thinking about?
Sure.
How do you go about thinking and about that restriction?
It's a great question. So, visually, if you could picture a big spreadsheet, 11 by 17, landscape, so it's a horizontal look of, on one side, all of the expenditures that we're projecting, and on the other side, all the revenues we're projecting. We get a number, which is usually a deficit, which prompts me to have to go back and cut areas, in the expenditure list. That leads us to thinking about how much we can potentially raise in other revenue outside of the local tax base. Now, the cap that was placed by the government on the percentage a district can raise taxes has been in effect for probably 4 or 5 years now. Is there. It doesn't go away. The only time it can go away is if a school district board votes to open up the budget process for a vote to the community, the way it was done in the old days. Now, there's this opportunity that a lot of districts like ours take to not have the voting public vote on the budget, but with the condition that we're not going to raise taxes beyond 2%. So we're kind of locked into that 2% right now. So that number is fixed. That revenue side is fixed.
Can we just be clear here that the 2% is the tax cap based on the schools? There could be an additional tax increase.
When we get our tax bills, I'm a resident here in Highland Park, and every year, maybe twice a year, we get a bill, or at least an overview of what where our taxes are going. We see our local municipal taxes show up there, our school taxes, our county taxes, and I think it's even presented in a pie format. Now, I believe the school taxes are the largest percentage of that pie, part of that pie. So we're cognizant of that. But again, that 2% cap is a protection there. Means, hey, this school district cannot really budge beyond that. The only other opportunity the district has to raise more tax revenue is in certain special circumstances when health benefits cost inordinately more than the district can handle, in which case there's a little safety valve the state put in place that allows the district to raise taxes a little bit more at a certain percentage to offset those rising medical
So
costs.
Benefits, insurance, and what have you, if they rise above a certain level, then you do have a little fail-safe.
Correct.
Okay.
Last year, I believe we were able to go beyond 2%, another 1.2%, to make up for a heavy load in the increase in medical benefits. Yeah, the school budget is made up of a lot of things. It's not just paper, desks, books. It's mostly salary, and why not? I mean, the most important resource a school has is its people, and then there are benefits. However, not too far away, number 3 would be the costs a district incurs to service students who have special needs. And I'd like to touch on that a little bit because it's a substantial portion of the budget that I think the taxpayer needs to recognize is, while in some way a source of pride, or should be a source of pride for our community, and I'll explain why in a second, but in another way, a challenge, because it does absorb a lot of our resources. So our early childhood school, Irving, which serves pre-K to 1 students, grades 1 students, is seeing an inordinate, even more so than in previous years. I mean, I get on camera every year and I say the same thing, but I got to tell you, this year we're seeing it to be more exacerbated. Numbers of very young kids who have some very serious behavioral and learning challenges, and more behavioral than we are seeing learning. And of course, kids who come to us with such serious behavioral challenges at that age often are impacted in other ways, academically, socially, emotionally. So we're scrambling. We're finding ourselves having to open up new classrooms, hire additional teachers, additional paraprofessionals to support the kids. Books, materials, supplies, they don't cost a whole lot of money. We can be resourceful and use our pool, but it's the additional salary and setup that ends up being a challenge. Here's the source of pride, though, before you ask your next question. It's our perception that one reason why we're seeing such a large influx is because we're gaining notoriety as being, a high-end, high-quality school district, as much for our general education population as for our special education population.
That was actually going to be my question, but what do you attribute the increase to? What kind of numbers are we talking about? Are we talking about, a lot of new students this year? Or the past few years?
So there is an organization, a state arm, referred to as early intervention, that it's a public entity that provides services to parents, guardians of infants, newborns through infancy, that helps parents tackle early onset issues that are diagnosed by pediatricians, OBGYNs, and early intervention services also will refer these children when they turn the age of 3.5 to school districts if they feel additional special support is needed on behalf of the child, but serviced by the school district. Each year we're getting 5 to 10 referrals. We're getting 20, 25, 30 referrals now. On top of that, we are unfortunately confronting an issue that other districts are also having to deal with. There are some families, guardians, who will take it upon themselves to what, in edu-speak parlance, is referred to as a unilateral placement of a child in a school outside of our district, and then want the home school district of residence, to pay for tuition and transportation for that child. Now, how do they get away with circumventing the process and just saying, hey, you know what, my child has special needs, and I don't care what you have to offer in Highland Park. I feel like such and such a school, and wherever in North Jersey is a better placement for my child. Well, with a good litigator and a strong team, a legal team, lots of things can happen. There are a lot of ways we can get around the system, and unfortunately, our district has been hit with 3 of these cases this year alone. They cost us money in legal fees, and then if we don't are not able to win the fight, because we do contest oftentimes these placements, pointing out that we have a wonderful system, that we could service your child, or we should at least be given the opportunity to see if we can service your child. Nevertheless, sometimes we have to settle on a mutual agreement because things didn't go through the courts process the way we hoped, and that still costs us money. It could be anywhere between $30,000 to $50,000 additionally a year for a child who was unilaterally placed in a school district. Now, if I tell you I have 3 of those cases, and you do the math, that's $150,000 tied up right there that we didn't anticipate. We don't know when these things come up now when we're planning for next year. We have to just respond to them as they come. So it's a confluence of these things that is increasing our budget $750,000 almost every year, on top of salary increases and medical benefit increases, and So,
And then, besides these challenges, are there any other major challenges that you haven't mentioned yet?
no, no. I think that's about it.
So then you have input from the community that could actually impact the direction that you wanted to take with either curriculum or whatever. And how often does that happen? That makes a major change.
At least once a year, something comes across our desk or email inbox from somebody in the community. It could even be a student that compels us to make a change to the budget before the final budget is presented. Now, the forums that we've held have been helpful. I can't recall a time when the forum led to a change, a direct change.
So talk about that just a bit, because I know in the past you've gone out to the community and as you said, you've gone out and explained where the budget process is and where you are with the budget. And you're going to do that again this year. What sorts of forums are you going to be holding this year?
So the Finance Committee has to meet again to discuss where we'll be, but right now I anticipate we'll hold one forum at a local synagogue. We've been trying to, there are 3 or 4 synagogues in town, so we've been trying to move from synagogue to synagogue. Likely a presentation to the general community and the seniors at the Senior Citizen Center, and I think that's it. In the past, we've held forums for the PTO, but they haven't been well attended, so we think we'll just fold that meeting that forum into the Senior Citizen-based forum.
Then you have the board meeting where you give the presentation and then the final presentation. Now, I know that the state mandates that the budget be presented in a certain form that be legible or understandable to most people. So you have to do 2 forms of the budget, one that's more user-friendly when you do these presentations?
Yeah, what's called the user-friendly budget. If you look at it, it ain't so user-friendly, but it's a whole lot better than the budget that we have to actually send off to the state. And that will be posted on March 19th, the day after the March 18th preliminary budget is presented. Also, on the website will be my slides, my presentation that pulls out some of the highlights of the budget. I will, as I've done in the past, present a chart that shows you dollar amounts of expenditures proposed and what we believe will be revenue, so people can do the comparisons. And we should by then have a projection as to what the cost will be to the taxpayer, dollar amount for the average of valued assessed home at $150. The value per square foot, I believe that is. So that'll all happen on March 19th. So there are different ways that people can hear about the budget.
One thing we didn't mention, and I didn't ask about, in terms of challenges, was the change over the past few decades in state aid. I think I know the answer to this, but what's the state of state aid to our?
So we read a lot in the press. Senator Sweeney and Governor Murphy have been going at it over the last couple of years with competing state aid formulas. It all, by the way, believe it or not, stems from the 80s. This has been a conversation going back to a landmark case here in the state called Abbott v. Burke. And anybody who's watching, who's interested, can just Google Abbott. I believe that's 2 B's and 1 T, v. Burke, B-U-R-K-E. And we'll find a whole bunch of things about it. Anyway, so you're talking 30 years now we've been having this argument. And it's heated up again. And the state hasn't come to a real agreement on how it wants to fund schools. But on the books right now is Senator Sweeney's plan, or more of his plan, even though there was some kind of compromise between the 2 parties, that has severely underfunded some schools that the state interprets to have been overfunded over many years. We don't fall into that category. We would have been given notice that we were overfunded. However, even though we've been underfunded for years, we don't expect to get much more than maybe a few $1,000s here and there. So the burden, again, is on the local taxpayer to front the bill to fund schools. I was just talking to Mark Krieger, our finance chair, this past Monday night at a board meeting. It was actually after a board meeting. He was saying back in his day, he was a board member back in the 90s here, the state was contributing something like 80, 90, or 90% of what it should be, its fair share, to school districts. Now we're getting like 10 to 15%. That's a big number we're missing out on. And that's why going into this year, I had to cut staff. Fortunately, didn't increase class sizes, but I had to cut some other staff that have hurt us. I'm looking again at next year at this planning for the next year's budget, having to make some cuts. And I'm not suggesting staff cuts, but I'm going to have to find ways to deal with all of the additional expenditures that we're having a really hard time burning. The way in which we're moving now is just not sustainable. The board and I agree on that. So I'm going to have to be even more creative than I've been in the past with my team, my leadership team.
In terms of, with respect to that, and in terms of the budget, in terms of curriculum, in terms of what's available, the cuts that you're talking about, would that be a contracting curriculum? Would be?
It's a great question. Everything's on the table. However, there's a pecking order that the board and I have when it comes to what we cut. We want to maintain class sizes at close, if not at where they are now. That's a biggie. So that means, cutting teachers. It's way low on the priority list. We don't want to cut programs. We're a small district. We don't offer as many programs as I'd like to offer as it is. So that's very high up on the list of don't touches. I think the things that we have to look at are what services we're providing that are not utilized effectively. I might have certain extracurricular activities. I get that they're programs, but look at activities that are just not being populated by a lot of kids. Not servicing a lot of students. I don't consider that cutting a program because if I only have a couple of kids in a program out of a 1,600 student body, it's pretty reasonable to say that that's not an existing program, really, except for those two kids. So we'll look at those things. There might be creative ways to tap into what we're doing with our facilities work. I'm not looking at expanding programs. I don't have anything really in the pot to start throwing at new things here, new things there. I will say that this year, going into this year's budget, we did, despite the hardship that we experienced when we were planning this year's budget last year, we did expand 2 areas, but we felt it was a need because of safety and security. We added an assistant principal at the high school and a position called Dean of Restorative Practices. Mm-hmm. And I've talked about that with the viewers and you in the past. Those were essentials. We just had to figure out a way because it was about safety and security. And look, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not going to cut programs. I'm not going to cut staff if I can help it. But the untouchable, the non-negotiable is safety and security. You don't go there. Is anything going to compromise safety and security? That's the third rail. You don't touch it.
Well, this sounds like quite a challenge over the next
It's what gets me up at about 3 a.m. If you ever pass the Taylor household here in town, you see a light on. That's me trying to read a book to get back to sleep because I'm obsessing about the budget.
You're dreaming about Excel spreadsheets, I'm sure.
So more like nightmares.
That's all I have. Is there anything that we didn't cover that?
No, I do. I'll just say in closing, I do encourage the community to have a voice. And if people in the community don't feel comfortable showing up at a board meeting or a forum, not all of us are good in large groups, write me an email. I'm very accessible, at least I try to make myself very accessible. My email address is on the district website, on the front page. You fish around, you'll see it.
It'll be right underneath you.
I'm sorry?
It's right underneath you right now while they're watching.
Exactly. With, Taylor at hpschools.net. Thank you for that ticker. And I'll be glad to either respond by email or pick up the phone and make a call. I'm relatively a digital native, turning 50 in 2 weeks.
Oh,
But yet, I'm still of that digital native generation. So I've grown up with computers, but I'm old school in a lot of ways too. And one of those ways is to recognize how important it is to pick up the phone or write a letter. Emails don't cut it all the time. So I just want to encourage everybody to reach out.
Okay, and I hope you all got that message, and we'll repeat the email address right after this on screen. So thank you very much again for
My
doing
pleasure.
this. It's been very informative, and thank you very much.